It's the straight shots. The straight shot is the hardest shot to master in this game. Playing within the lines in general is because it takes a great deal more skill. Once you figure out how to manipulate the disc so it stays on the line, you'll have figured out how to hit almost any hole. There's a lot of holes up there that take a little bit more touch and maybe an approach. Colwich, if you go out and play Colwich, you're going to have to play some lines. You're not going to be able to just jam giant shots. It doesn't look easy. I would say that some of the additions to my bag have made huge increases in my game. Hi, this is Ron Convers, sponsored by Dynamic Discs, Hand-Eye Corporation, and Blue Point Discs out of Edmond, Oklahoma. You're listening to the Chain Clankers podcast.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another great episode here at the Chain Clankers podcast. Today we have another local to us pro who we got to sit down with. You would have heard him on our previous episode where we did the group interview. We have Ron Convers, and we also have really some exciting news. You know, this is our second year. We've been doing some stuff. We've been trying to grow the sport. We've been trying to do what we can, putting ourselves out there, trying to try new things, trying to get our name out there, trying to grow so we can get the show out to as many people as possible. And that's part of it, but very exciting. But Quentin's going to tell us about the episode and about what that news is.
Yeah, absolutely. We have set out since our very first episode that we want to help those newer disc golfers, and we want to actively help those who are trying to improve their game. We believe there's not another show out there who does it like we do, and we believe that we are the best at what we do, and we want to only continue to get better, and we want to incorporate new ways of helping you guys improve your disc golf game. And it's very exciting. We have reached a sponsorship with Upper Park Disc Golf. They make some of the best bags in the game, and honestly they have a very good core value. And you know, we've spoken to multiple people within their organization, and just their core values, what they stand for as a company, is somebody that we want to be partners with. And so we're gonna have a ton of content coming out with them, their sponsored players, as well as their products. So you're gonna want to make sure you stay tuned for that. If you want a new disc golf bag, maybe you want some of their merch, whatever it is, there's a link in the description. It's going to be in every episode from here on out. It's going to be in the description. It's going to take you to their site with our code automatically in there, Clankers10, again, promo code Clankers10. And you can use that even if you don't use our link and you just go to Upper Park Disc Golf right now, Clankers10, you'll save yourself 10%, and you do support our podcast by supporting our sponsors. We do get a little bit of a kickback every time that you check out with our code. So we do appreciate you guys supporting us, supporting our sponsors, and that does allow us to grow and continue to help and upgrade our show, because that's definitely something that we want to do. I think that's enough with Upper Park. Again, thank you so much to them for being partners with us, and hopefully we've got some conversations going on, so maybe we can have a couple more announcements like this here in the future. But for this episode, we get to talk to three-time world champion Ron Convers. So much fun. He teaches us a little bit about how his disc golf journey, how he almost never even got started in disc golf, and how he's gotten to his point, and how he had to make a very tough decision about which manufacturer to stick with for his career. So you're going to want to make sure you listen to that, as well as this is the show for you. If you want to learn how to hit lines, if you want to throw better, this is an absolute must listen for you. Ron teaches us multiple ways to hit your lines and how you can become more accurate in disc golf. Make sure you stay tuned all the way through the end to hear Ron's hot take, as well as, you know, we've got those good disc recommendations and stories in the ace round. Without further ado, let's go ahead and let's bring Ron on. Alrighty, everyone, it is time. You heard him in the intro. Super excited to get our one-on-one interview with Ron today. Ron, how are we doing today, man?
Doing great. Sitting home after a little bit of slop outside.
Ron's just less than an hour away from us here in Wichita. We got some snow, so he got a little bit of snow ice down there. I'm just curious, do you still, I've done it once or twice, gone out and played in the snow. I did it last year, but this year I'm just like not that interested in it. It was just like cold and messy, and I'm like, I can wait. Do you still go out and play in the snow or do any kind of those rounds anymore?
Less than I used to. As you get older, your hands don't like it as much, and it throws your timing off when it's all cold and crappy. So I don't play as good, and it frustrates me. If I go out just for fun to play with friends in the snow, I'll do that every now and again, just to say I did, like the first snow of the season. After that, Yeah, it's not as fun.
Yeah, I feel that. I really only did it last year, kind of like Horatio said, maybe once or twice, and it's just brutal, man. I don't know about you, the listeners at home. I just do not have a good time. And like you were saying, Ron, I just find myself being frustrated. Maybe I'm not throwing as far, my putts aren't as good, or just the timing is simply just not all the way there. I feel also underrated. I feel as though I like don't trust the tee pad as much because it could be slippery, could be icy, and I just am scared of hurting my knee or a different body part. So yeah, I don't really like to play in the snow. Now, last year when we did have that hot stretch of like -20 for what felt like an entire month, yeah, once it was like 10 degrees again, I was ready to go back out and play. But thank God we have not had that this year, and this winter has been pretty good. So super excited. Spring is almost here. Ron, I assume we got some tournaments coming up. When's your first tournament this year?
Last week, or actually a couple of weeks ago, we played one. It was a farm tour in Ponca City. I ended up in a tie for second in Open, and was sort of happy. Both rounds were over 1,000, and I felt like I threw okay. I missed the last putt to go into a solo second, and it was all good.
So you said you did finish tying for second?
Yeah, I ended up in a group tie. There was, I think, 3 or 4 of us in a tie for second.
What are your thoughts on that? Should disc golf have ties where there's like a tie, or do you think that there should be a winner?
Well, this was for second, so there was a winner.
Okay, gotcha.
But
Okay, yeah, I misunderstood that. Sorry.
no, we'd play off if I was tied for first.
Yeah.
If you're in second, you just get to split whatever you get for the places that are set up for that. So if you're second, third, fourth, and fifth, you'll pool the money and split it, and it'll be a lot less than it would if you got solo.
Definitely getting those solos are fun. I know one tournament, and I don't know exactly why they did this, maybe just for fun, but they had multiple ties at like second and fourth and I think sixth, and they made us all go to a throw off for who got the individual spots. I think they just were trying to get more time to calculate the other results. But yeah, that was the only tournament that's ever happened at, and I'm not playing in that tournament this year, but
Well,
it was fun nonetheless, I
that's
guess.
that's not the sanctioned way, but at any rate, yeah. The only if you're playing a PDGA sanctioned event, the only thing that you're supposed to play off for is first place.
Yeah, which I mean makes sense. There's not a whole lot of reason to.
Trophies.
Yeah, pretty much. I think the coolest playoff that I've seen that was not Disc Golf Pro Tour was at one of my very first tournaments, like my second or third maybe. And these guys had played like 6 or 7 playoff holes, just toe to toe, tying each other every single hole. And they come to a short one. The first guy is parked right under the basket, and the next guy aced it to walk it off. It was so cool. Literally, the like 70 people that are watching were we all lost our minds. It was so cool. Have you ever been in a playoff situation like that before, Ron?
Been in a lot of playoffs. Some were really cool, some weren't so good. I haven't had anybody ace on me, and I don't remember acing on anybody else. But a lot of the ones that I was playing, the holes were par fours or big holes where it just really wasn't an option to throw in an ace. On the Oz Tour, I used to play the Oz Tour an awful lot and go through Kansas Disc Golf Association. And we played a lot of rounds, and I'm not sure how it's happened to other people. It just has never happened to me.
Gotcha. It's definitely something that's really fun. And I feel like you either have to be prepared for it or have the skill, to put up with the pressure to be able to. I feel like it's a different kind of pressure than just playing kind of regular tournament for sure.
Yeah.
But, with that, for those that maybe haven't listened to the other episode, and we didn't get a whole lot into, your story and all that, take us back to the beginning. Tell us about, how Ron started in disc golf, your early days, and how you ended up where you are now.
I've always liked throwing a Frisbee around. I think on my Facebook page, there's a picture of me and my grandfather back in it would have been probably late 60s. playing with a Lambo. And I kept the love of flying things throughout my life, and then played some object golf. And then in 81, just after I graduated high school, they put a course in just like a block south of where the high school was. And it was like, hey, what's all this? And after the explanation of what the baskets were for, I went out and messed around with it. And then a few years later, a buddy of mine came up with some beveled edge discs. They were the first ones, the Eagles, which were the precursor to the Arrow. And we went out and threw, and then we got some more discs as time went by. And he and I were really competitive. I was working in one town for a company as a cook, and he was working in another town for the same company as a cook, same position. And we were good friends. He lived in the town near where I lived and traveled to work. So whenever he got the disc, he said, "Hey, come on out, we'll play." And we just competed and competed and competed, and gradually we got better, and we got a lot better. And we started beating up on the locals and thought we were hot stuff. And they had a small tour come in I want to say 91 that came through Ponca, and we signed up, and I signed up for just a straight amateur. I didn't know there were any other divisions available, and I ended up placing fifth, beat out one of my other friends. And from then on, I just started competing more. About 94, 95, I played quite a bit of advanced, ended up taking I tried to win the Oklahoma State title in amateur, and then advanced, and then open. And I managed to do all of those. And then when I won the open title, I moved up and started, or when I won the advanced title, I moved up and started playing open. And my first open event was B tier in Stillwater. And I ended up playing with Mitch McClellan and Mark Bozicek, two names you may not know that are still pretty good in their divisions, and placed top three. And it's like, holy crap. And then for a couple of years, I paid and paid and paid and paid and paid, just got stomped. And so at the time, master's age was 35, and I was master's age by then. And so I started playing masters, and I got confident in my skills again. And as soon as I was confident that, I was playing competitively, I'd start playing open tournaments too. So I'd bounce in between. And then they moved the master's age up to 40 at about the same time I turned 40. So I was still playing back and forth whenever I wanted to. I was playing pretty good, and I got picked up by .com. It was discsource.net, which was a company out of Winfield, Kansas. Guy by the name of Chris Bulby sponsored me, and it was a lot of fun. We went out, and I ended up that year winning a bunch of, or the second year of his sponsorship, I ended up winning a bunch of B tiers back to back. And one of them was the Emporia Open. And at that time, I beat out one of the big boys from Discraft and, everybody else. And I ended up getting picked up by Discraft. And I stayed with them for 10 years. Really had some good wins with them. Went down and played a non-sanctioned, what would be considered a major right now, at Crystal River, Florida, which was called the Players Cup, and ended up basically leading it all the way through with Ken Climo, and eventually lost it in a playoff. And it wasn't to Kenny. Kenny took third. I lost it to Barry Schultz. We were all three tied going through. One in a buddy of mine filmed it. In the second round, we had, I want to say we had Matty O, and then the third round, we had Garrett Girthy on the card, and those were filmed, and that was a ton of fun. And because of the high level of play, I got a little more interest from Discraft, and I was playing pretty good. I just went from there. I was playing an awful lot up in the Kansas area, playing all the KDGA events and winning a bunch of the yearly trophy as well as the summer state tournament. I've won the Kansas State event more times than anybody else, including Chris Smith. And I'm wearing the shirt for Smitty. So you can let him know that he's still not as good, but he'll have to catch up. At any rate, one of the good stories from the KDGA tour was hooking up with, there was a standing thing going on that if you played all of the events for the year, you'd get a free trip to the Florida Keys for a week. And there were three of us that did that. Myself, Scott Reek, and Harvey Barger. And Harvey went because he was running all the events at the time. And his sister was a National Geographic diver who was based out of Key Largo, and her husband owned Bayside, and his brother owned Marina Del Mar on the other side of the island. And so we go down there, and the first day we take a day trip. The second day, it was really cool. And each of us got to do something that we wanted to do on the trip. Scott wanted to go to Margaritaville. And so we all went to Margaritaville, stayed the night in a place down there. And then that was on Key West. And then Harvey wanted to go snorkeling, and the weather was sort of inclement. We all show up, we left here, and it was colder than crap. It was weather like it is right now as we were driving out. We get down there about the time the cold front rolls through after driving pretty much straight through. And we're like bailing out of the cars in our shorts, and all the locals are putting on their coats. It was 70 degrees. Oh my God, it's a cold wave. So we went on. Harvey finally got to do his snorkeling. And then the last thing I wanted to do was I wanted to see if Kenny's home course was what made him so good. So we went through and played his home course on the way back. And that was sort of a highlight trip that sort of came about because of disc golf. Disc golf has been good. There's been a lot of interesting adventures and things like that along the way. You said we'll talk about misadventures and adventures, and you haven't got time. So after 10 years of playing for Discraft, one of my other sponsors, Dynamic Discs, started producing discs. And so Discraft told me basically I had the option of staying with them or moving on. And I moved on and pretty much shocked them all. And I haven't looked back. Dynamic's been really good, and it's been a good partnership. So I've been with them for, I think it's 11 years this year.
What made you decide to move on? What was it overall?
See, when I got picked up by Discraft, I was really, really close to 40. And I would hit the points spread they needed to be on an upper team. I'd be within 3 points. And I would say, hey, guys, can't you just give me a couple bonus points to push me over into the next team? And no, we can't do that this year. And it happened the next year. I was like 3 points off. And I did that for 3 years. And the third year, I heard things in the background and decided it was time to move on. And basically, I think since I was an older player, they figured I was never going to be productive. Now, since then, when I switched over, my rating went from the thousands. So somewhere around 1,001, 1,002, it jumped up to like 1012, 1015, somewhere in there, and hung out for a couple of years. And that would have been when I was close to 50. No, yeah, that would have been my late 40s. Oh, and that's the other part. I've been basically 1,000 rated for over 20 years. The last year was the first year I didn't hit 1,000 at the end of the year, and I dropped below. I had a lot of stuff going on last year, and my focus wasn't really as much on disc golf as it could have been. And so I'm now at 997 and trying to get back up to 1,000. I'll be 60 this year.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great goal to have, to get back to 1,000, going 20 years of being 1,000. I'd just like to maybe hit 2 days of being at 1,000. Who knows if that'll even happen. Hopefully with some of your wisdom and the other wisdom that we've garnered from this show, we'll be able to do it. And I just want to stop right here because so far I've learned so much and I want to unpack just a little bit of it. So I honestly kind of want to go back to your high school day when you saw that course being put in the ground. And then that's kind of maybe what kind of sparked you into exploring more disc golf. You are already kind of throwing a whammo around, kind of already like flying discs, those kinds of things. If that course isn't built, do you think you still wind up in disc golf or?
Probably not. Probably not. Actually, it wasn't so much the course as friends. I got introduced by friends and our relaxation time. Grab a 6-pack, and there was a cutout in one of the evergreens there with a bench in it, and we'd set the beer under the bench, and we'd play. It was a 9-hole. We'd play the 9-hole, come back, have a beer, put it back down, make another loop, and we'd spend a few hours doing that and competing the whole time, talking crap and just trying to show the other person up, and neither one of us could do it. We were both pretty evenly matched. It was tons of fun. And you'd go and practice and come back, and the next time you were out there, it's like, hey, check this out, I learned a new toy, watch this. And he'd be like, yeah, watch this, I learned something too. And so we'd be back and forth, and we stayed that way for a long time. And I was so hooked up on it that I was I think somewhere in my collection I have pretty much all the discs that were made from about 83 to about 90, the late 90s. If you could throw it, I got it and tried it out just to see if it was worth. They may not all be new, some of them were used, but I'd get one and I'd throw it just to see if it would help. This brand new disc, is it going to help me somehow match up with my game and make me better? And so I tried everything.
And is that something that you're still doing? Like anytime that Dynamic drops a new disc or trilogy, is it always, I have to try the new disc? And is that something that you would recommend to other players as well?
Well, okay. So part of my sponsorship includes new toys. So whenever they pop one out, I'll play with it and see what it can do and see what I think about it and whether it's going to go in the bag. And that's not, with so many discs for a while, there were so many discs popping out every year. It was really hard to tell right away whether you'd want to incorporate something into your bag or not. And if you're happy with what you have, great. But it always, I would say that some of the additions to my bag have made huge increases in my game skills. And being able to ride the wave of technology, basically from the time I started. In 83, they came out with the beveled edge disc, and I was just starting to play then. Now, I stopped for a little while in the mid 80s, moved out to Pennsylvania, and there was nothing close from 85 to 91, or from 85 to 90, really. There was nothing that was close to me that I could throw. And so I still had some discs in the closet, but I couldn't really use them. And then when I got back, we moved back to Oklahoma, moved back to Ponca, and I had a place to go throw again. And I started right back in competitively. And just being able to see all the different ways that discs were developed, I can tell you what a disc is going to do from basically holding it in my hands. I can tell you whether it's going to go right or left, or whether it's going to be, a fairway that is overstable as crap or what. And yeah, it was fun. I think that it does help just to try new things out. And while you're doing it, you have to remember what it's made for. I hear people talk bad about discs that they don't throw properly. I remember when the Patrol came out, everybody was like, man, this disc, I throw it and all it does is it just anhyzers like crazy, and they were crying around. And you're not supposed to be smashing it like it's a 400 footer. That's made for throwing 200 foot in a straight line, or maybe having it go out with a little bit of a hyzer flip for a 250-foot anhyzer. And you can't do that with faster discs or more overstable discs. And a lot of people forget that.
Yeah, that's something very interesting. You'll see online people review discs that just came out and be like, oh, this disc is crap. Like, it doesn't really do what I want it to do. But everybody has a different throwing style. And I feel like at some point, some people just, instead of fixing their form, they kind of just fix their bag around their form. And so, if they have kind of where they're pulling a disc and turning stuff over, the easiest thing to do is just buy a bunch of overstable stuff, and it corrects your form for you. And so, when a disc comes out that everyone is buying that's not overstable, and they buy it because of the hype, and they throw it, and they're like, this disc is trash. It just flips over on me and turns into a roller on me all the time. So that's very interesting you say that.
Yeah, you hear that a lot. And that's one of the common newbie things, is that they'll have a disc. They'll go out and buy the hottest, fastest, whatever it is, doesn't matter. The one that everybody's talking about. I saw somebody throw this 600 feet. Well, okay, but that doesn't mean you're going to take it and throw it 600 feet, and at the same rate, if they've got a mid-range comes out, you got to remember it's a mid-range. It's not made to go at like a driver, and you're not supposed to throw it full out. And how many courses do you go to that every hole is 600 feet? If you're playing in Wichita, there's a lot of holes up there that take a little bit more touch and maybe an approach. And now Colwich, if you go out and play Colwich, you're going to have to play some lines. You're not going to be able to just jam giant shots. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, you're 100% correct. We went out last weekend with one of my buddies who has typically only played in wide open spaces. I don't think he's really ever played a wooded course. I don't know have you gone out to Colwich West yet, Ron?
I haven't seen the new layout. No.
Okay. Yeah. That's the one we were playing. Really fun course. I really, really like it. And my man was attracted to the trees. Literally every single shot was hitting a tree. And it was just interesting to see that, you really, in those situations, especially the more wooded situations, more where you have to hit those lines, you can't just pick whatever you want and smash on it and hope for the best. Because if you're in a wide open field or a wide open hole, like let's say you go to Millbrook, more than 80% of those holes, you can just throw whatever you want and you're probably going to be fine. You're probably getting a par at the very least. Where you go out to Colwich, you actually have to think about what you want your disc to do. Where do you want it to land? How do you want it to fly? All those different kinds of things. So I think that's really interesting that you were talking about that. And I want to explore that just a little bit further with, how can somebody learn how to do that? How can you understand what disc is right for you in that shot? Is that just you having to go out to the field and test it a bunch of times? Is that having, maybe you go out to Colwich a ton of times and you're like, yep, this enforcer is not it for this hole, or, I cannot throw the pure here. I can't reach the hole. Is it just a bunch of trial and error, or is there any kind of way to get by that?
Part of it's going to be playing a lot of different courses. Knowing what you can do with your toys is the big one. If you got a bunch of tools in your bag and you don't know what they do, or you don't know if they're all the same. Say, I hear people like, well, I just buy 10 of the same mold and then I let them break in a little bit more or less. That doesn't really work, because if you have they're all the same speed, so you end up with discs that a fast disc, the faster it is, the more side to side you get, just more lateral movement, the wider the wing is. And so a lot of times a mid-range or a slower fairway is going to go a lot straighter than a super high speed, long driver. And if you're not aware of that, or if you don't have the disc to fit the holes that you're playing, then yeah. So a lot of people don't ever get challenged. They won't play a course that, or haven't played a course that challenges them like that, and they don't know what to do. If they're only playing the open courses, okay, that drives their style. They're going to throw the shots that they could throw anywhere. But if they go and play a wooded course, they're really going to get a wake-up call, and they may not know what to do. And really, they need to disc down and get straight stuff and try and hit straight lines through the woods, and hit the landing zone so they can make the next shot to get to the basket. But that's, it's they need to play more golf and less crush it.
Yeah, and that
is fun, but yeah.
No, that kind of wooded golf is so satisfying, especially when you can do it intentionally. I think it's a lot of times where you go and you play and you get lucky or you hit those lines. And, watching the pros on TV play some of those courses, and it's like, God, like, wow, they just got so lucky, or like, wow, like how they hit those lines. They're hitting those lines on purpose. Like, they go out and practice and hit those. And, people that don't play wooded courses or don't practice those wooded shots, they don't understand like that's the difference. Those pros, that's why they're on tour, or, just people in open period, because they can consistently hit those lines because they've practiced that, and they don't just like you said, those crush it kind of courses. You don't really have to worry about a line. You kind of just have to worry about a point in the sky or how much power you need to put on it. Besides that, who cares if it comes out to the right or a little bit to the left? You're not going to hit anything. All you're trying to do is get out there. As opposed to, playing in the woods. Some people have a really hard time with that release point and getting out of tunnel shots. Do you have any advice for that specifically?
Specifically for hitting a release point, it's how you line up your body. And if you stand with I would start with a standstill and try and hit the spot, and then work your way up to doing it again. If you can find a spot in your local park that's got a couple trees close together that you can throw through from different angles, try and hit the shot through there, and your timing eventually you'll figure out how to do it. Part of it's just going to be repetition and figuring out how to line up your drive, because if you're too open stanced, you're going to end up pulling it to the right. If it's too closed, you're going to pull it to the left. And so figuring out how to line up your hips and how to line up your feet is going to be more hitting the line than anything. A lot of people try and control it by their swing, but the swing is all driven off of how you're set up. I mean, it's almost a visual. I want to go, no, you do it like this.
Yeah.
And I just, it's hard on this format. But if you were to set up so that your shoulders were pointed at the gap that you wanted to hit, that'd be a good first starting point. Put your arm out as this is where I want to release at, and work towards getting to that release point with the disc at the angle that you want it at. That's the hard part.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I kind of want to explore this a little bit further. We just talked a little bit about hitting those gaps, and I just learned you should really kind of be using your shoulder and your body to really focus on throwing through the gap, which I think is really good. Something else that I know that I struggle with in the woods is getting that right height control on the disc. In an open field or in literal field work, it's so easy to throw it as high as you want because there's nothing that's going to bring it down. How can you generate the same amount of power and throw your disc not as high without it burning into the ground too early?
That's practice and field work. You get out there and you throw. When you're practicing, you're throwing shots that you can plug into the fairways that you're going to be meeting up with. And so if you have to throw really flat shots, I mean, when I started, my goal originally was to throw basically a line drive shot. If you can throw a line drive shot, then you can put another disc in your hand to make it go right or left or straight, just by disc selection. You just throw a line drive straight shot, and then you can change it by adapting the disc. Throwing down or throwing up should be in some ways harder than throwing flat. if you get out and practice, because the best shots are the ones going forward. And if you're throwing it up, you're not going to get the distance out of it that you want to go forward. If you throwing it down is one of those things you use when you're throwing downhill. You have to throw it down. And that's not as easy as it seems. And we don't have many places to practice that around here. Get out there and do field work and watch what your disc is doing. Okay, so I got a quick drill for you. This is something you can do that in field work that's going to make a big difference in your skill level. So you go out and you throw, you find yourself a straight line, like a football field hash mark or a soccer field. Get one of those lines, or even just a line in between two telephone poles in the open field, and throw everything that you have down the line. Don't try and make any corrections. Okay, no corrections at all. Throw them all just like you would any other time, and throw them all about the same speed. You're going to see a couple of things. One, you get a good idea of whether the stuff is overstable, understable, and how far off the line it goes. Make the mental notes, or if you can't remember, write it down in a book. If you got a hash mark where you can see how far everything is going, you get an additional benefit in that usually there's a clump right there where everything piles up. And if you take the slowest disc out of that clump, you're going to get the best mix of distance and accuracy combined. So you go out and you throw everything, and you'll see everything sort of group up. And at the point where they're all grouped up, make like a 40-foot circle and search the circle for the slowest disc you can find in it, and use that disc for your distance driver. Okay. So anyway, back to the drill. After you throw everything and you make notes on whether you went right, left, or whatever, you gather it up, you come back to the line, and you throw the same shot, but this time, if it went 15 foot left, you aim 15 feet to the right. And you try and drop everything on the line using Kentucky windage. Okay. That so far so good. If you're happy with your throws and everything comes out on the line, you go back to your starting point again, and this time you use what I would call English. It's going to mess you up for a while. You tilt the disc to the right or the left on your release using Anheuser or Heiser to keep the disc on the line. Once you figure out how to manipulate the disc so it stays on the line, you'll have figured out how to hit almost any hole. So you'll get a lot of benefits out of it. The first one is you'll know what your discs do. So when you step up to a hole, you'll be able to look at the hole and go, oh, yeah, 250 feet, and it just a slight curve to the right, wide open. I could throw a putter here. This is great. And you'll know exactly which one to grab and go. Or, whatever the situation is, you'll know which disc to pull out of your bag. And that's a big step when you step up on a new hole.
What Quentin's thoughts are on that, since he does a little bit more field work than I do,
Yeah. I mean, I like it. I think that's a really good drill that anybody who is doing field work now can incorporate. And I think that and I'm going to tell on myself here, I'm definitely somebody when I'm out in the field. Am I trying to push as far as I possibly can? Absolutely. But I have also started to try to incorporate more of that accuracy to it. I think my first kind of step was trying to rebuild my form into something that I liked. And so now that I'm kind of getting there and I can kind of trust my discs again, now it's like, okay, how can I make my mind go blank, like Brian Schweberger was talking about last episode, and just throw the disc, and how can I hit the point that I want to? And I think this is significantly better than what I was trying to do. I know I was like, I would probably say, oh, I want to hit the 20-yard line. And because the way that this field is, it's got the two sets of hash marks all the way down. So you've got the right and the left. And I was just pretending as though that was kind of my gap to hit. So one set or something like that, I would go, okay, let's stay in the middle of this gap. Let's not go on the outside of it, see what the disc kind of does. And then from there, I can be like, okay, well, next set, now I'm going to throw Heiser. So I want it to go to the right of the hash marks. And then I want it to finish still inside of that gap. So I think my gap was a little bit bigger than this. than just using the individual hash marks. But I still think that this is very, very helpful because I agree. You get to learn your discs. And I think that that is something that is super helpful for any disc golfer at any experience level, whether you've been playing for 3 days or you've been playing for 3 years or 30 years. I really think that if you can understand what your disc is going to do when you throw it, you just have so much more confidence in what you're going to throw. And I think it does allow you to go to other courses and be able to play those courses. There's plenty of people who go and play a tournament round completely blind. They don't need a practice round because they can see what the hole is in front of them and know that they have the disc for that tool. So I really do think this will help me so much more. And I know the next time I go out to the field, I'm going to try doing this drill, and I'm not going to try to worry as much about pushing a new PR for distance. I'm going to focus on the accuracy, and I'm going to try this drill.
Well, it's not even that. If you throw, say you throw your super distance disc, and it, no matter what you do, whenever you get done with it, it hits the ground and takes off and goes to the left. You know how far to throw it to the right to keep it on that line. So next time you're out there and you've got OB to the left, you'll know right off the bat, well, either I'm aiming to the right, or I'm putting anhyzer on this disc, or I'm pulling another disc out of my bag, because this one's going to go in the water.
Yeah, and I think another great way to visualize that is, and I assume you've played oak before, Ron. I know, Horatio, you and I, we play oak quite a bit. There's the holes alongside the river, especially, that if you throw something with too much hyzer or you give it too much of a skip, your likelihood and probability of going into the river and going OB shoots way up. So you have to make a disc selection. And I think disc golf is a lot about probabilities. If you bring that math into it, and if I throw a defender, or if I throw a raider or something like that on a river hole, my likelihood of going into the water is significantly higher because if I early release, it's already overstable. So it's going to want to go into the water in the first place. And B, if I throw it with any kind of angle, it's going to skip into the water. So I just cannot harp on more. What you're saying is having those data points and doing this drill allows you to know, okay, if this skips 30 feet to the left, I need to push the other OB side, and I need to trust that as long as it lands in bounds, it's going to get a skip.
Yeah, most of those shots you have along the river there are too narrow for something that fast anyway. And once again, disking down and not using the fastest disc in your bag is going to be money. On the first, when you turn the corner, the first hole for me is a putter or a hyzer around the trees and back down with a suspect or a justice, something slow, overstable. The next one is probably, it's a little bit further, so it's going to be like an escape or something like that, going sort of up towards the sidewalk and back down. And it's that way the whole way through until you cross the entry road up there, and you have another big shot that sets up on a par. Well, usually I'm playing it, it's a par 4. So I'll have it pushed back in the long pin. And when you get to that, you're looking at more where you set up to throw your next shot. And so it's still not going to be the fastest disc in your bag, because if it hits the ground and skips down from the road towards the water, and you end up in that crap, then you have nothing. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I literally the other day, Horatio, you and I, we were playing it and we were playing doubles, and I had a monster drive that I thought was going to be perfectly fine. And it kind of landed maybe mid hill, pretty straight with the tee pad, or just a little bit to the right of it. And then of course it took a big skip, went into the water. And so then I had to go play my buddy's drive, which was probably 100 feet back of where we were. And then all of a sudden it becomes a super technical shot that you have to hit. So I think the landing zone, and that's something that I've harped on before on this podcast, is super, super duper important. You have to have a landing zone and an idea in your mind of where you want to land in order to accomplish the objective of getting a successful par or birdie on the hole.
Yeah. Another quick tip for this situation is, if you haven't seen the course backwards, you should just take a quick walk, and the holes that are like 2-shot holes, or 3-shot holes, you'll figure out where you need to land by stand at the basket. Where do I need to come from to get to here, and then walk there? And where do I, how do I get to here from the tee pad? And you'll see that advice is used a lot of times, especially in the wooded places like Colwich, where you have to hit a spot so you can get a next shot. Or some of the better courses, the par 3s, 4s, and 5s, when you're looking at the bigger courses, you're not really trying to get all the way up to where it's not like deuce or die. You find the spot that'll get you the best shot so that you can get the next best shot. And you just keep playing position all the way in. If you walk it backwards, you'll see where the gaps are that you can get there from.
Yeah, I love that tip because sometimes I feel like the tee pad is very deceiving, whether, difference in altitude or trees or something else, depending on where the basket is. Looking from the tee pad, it seems like you have to hit a certain line or like you only have so much space. But once you get up to the basket and you look back, it looks more wide open, or you're like, oh, I just have to hit it from this angle or from this side. I have all this space on this side where you wouldn't normally see that from the tee pad. So I love that tip right there.
Makes a difference. And this is a lot of this play goes towards where course design is going now. And good courses are made to an audience. So if you've got a bunch of new people, you want fairly easy courses that they can go out, learn on, and have a good time. You don't want them to walk out onto a championship course and get all pissed off and be like, well, I'm never playing this game again. There's no sense in it. You want them to go have a good time and play. And that little 9-hole in Ponca was a really small course. It was the longest hole was uphill 321. It was huge at the time, but at the time we were also throwing discs that were like putters, so it was a huge hole. Now you've got all these discs that will travel a long way, so you can stretch the distances out some. But for somebody who's a true beginner, you're still looking at a pretty short course and keeping things, say, no more than 350 on most holes to keep them interested. You're not going to have people interested if they walk out there and everything is at or beyond their capabilities. They're going to get tired of it. As far as competitive play goes, right now our sport's being driven by, well, what I think are the really good courses are courses like Maple Hill, or courses like up in Vermont. The courses that offer a tremendous amount of variety of shots, but at the same time force you to throw a line. When you go to Vegas and you just throw big hyzers, or if you go to another course similarly where you don't even have to, you can throw a 600-foot shot 45 degrees away from the basket and it doesn't matter because you can still get there with an approach. That's really not good golf. I mean, that really caters to a very specific part of our overall field in disc golf, and very limited. And if you were able to, well, that's why everybody's worried about playing the OB lines at USDGC or playing within the lines in general, is because it takes a great deal more skill to throw specific shots rather than just, I'm going to blast a 600-footer that way, and then it'll be wide open. It won't matter. I think that some of the course design is being driven by what they can see on the videos. And that's not necessarily good, because it's not, for most people, it's not as fun. And if it's not fun, you're not going to come back. For the competitors, it caters to one style. If you go to North Carolina and play with Schwebe, you're going to find that an awful lot of those holes, you're throwing a mid-range off the tee pad, and maybe your second shot, and maybe your third shot before you get to putt. And they're designed that way. I mean, they're very, very tight. Come down to Ponca City and play the Bodoc course. It's very short. But if you throw a par, you'll have shot 1,000 rated round. It's because it's not wide open and you have to play in the lines. And if you're off the line, it's going to cost you strokes. It would be harder to video, which is why it doesn't make it onto TV. But I can't think of a whole lot of courses where if you throw a par round, it's 1,000 rated. Other than distance, what's the difficulties? And that's why I like courses like Maple Hill, which has a nice mix of distance and accuracy to where, yeah, if you can hit that line for 450, 500 feet, great. You're going to be ahead of the game. But if you throw it off the line, you're going to pay the penalty. And that's golf.
Have you been to the new course, Eagles Crossing in Missouri?
I have not. I've played a lot of Missouri courses, but I haven't played that one yet.
Just from what I've seen on videos and heard about, and it sounds like that one is going to be kind of a good combination, and maybe what courses, at least for pros, are kind of leaning to for the future, where there's some really long holes, but there's a good mixture of a lot of accuracy. You have to be able to throw far, but you also have to be very accurate. Do you think that that's kind of maybe what the future is going to be for pro side?
So. I would hope so. The Green Mountain Championships, those courses up there in Vermont, they played a Worlds there, and very challenging. And both of the courses, one had a lot of OB that was somewhat artificial, and one was all through the woods, very, very heavily wooded, but at the same time, par 4s and 5s, to where they had the length. And they both rewarded accurate shots and knowing what to throw at the right time. Sometimes the best shot off the tee pad was short, and then your second shot was the big crushing drive, instead of the first shot being the crushing drive.
Do you think that more artificial OB, or even like the mozzarella sticks at USDGC, like, do you think that those things are good for championship level courses, or should it be more natural OB, natural lines or landing zones that you have to hit?
If you don't have the obstacles to use, then creating an artificial obstacle is going to be the only way you can go to increase the difficulty. And they're very limited with what they can do with that up there. So I sort of understand when they started changing the rules around. I was pretty upset with their decisions on some of the early changes, and I just quit going. I went a couple times, and at one point I was one stroke behind Ken Climo on the last day in second place. And I don't think you can get a whole lot better than being there. Now the wheels came off and I ended up in 10th that round. So, but I finished top 10 at USDGC before they changed it to all the funky. I think we did play one clown's mouth, but it really became more and more, how skinny can we make it, instead of moving the venue to a venue that would support a better course. And I think that it's got a storied history. Okay, great. Ready to see it move somewhere else. But at the same time, that is a flagship Innova tournament. They control every aspect of that tournament, literally. And the idea that they would move it is not ever going to happen.
Yeah, and I know we are getting a little close on time, so we'll go to your hot take next, but just a quick little mini hot take on this. I think it is ridiculous that a manufacturer owns pretty much an entire major within disc golf. I think that is ridiculous. I think the PDGA or the Disc Golf Pro Tour or whatever should do whatever they can to buy out Innova from that, because I don't think a single manufacturer should have 100% control over a major as well. I completely agree. I'm all cool with the history. I appreciate and respect all that. But there becomes a time where it's time to move on from the course. It's time to move to something different. It's time to make a bigger challenge. And, I understand worlds changes every single year, and maybe the USDGC should change every single year or go to a new location instead of just being at the same location, because I don't know, maybe it would make it more impressive. I don't know. That's just I have only been in disc golf for a couple of years, but that is my mini quick take on my thoughts on the USDGC, at least.
Yeah, it is a hot topic from both sides. You'll find people defending it just because it is what it is, and because disc golf doesn't have as many unchanging courses. Now, I would argue that course has changed dramatically from when they put it in. The only thing that's really kept the same is the venue and the fact that it's owned by Innovate. And beyond that, I'm afraid I can't get too loud on it, because I've always been sponsored by somebody else, and it would be taken as me complaining because it's that. But at the same time, I would love to see it go to a more challenging, more centrally located, put it at Eagles Crossing. Make me happy. I want to see some real golf. I don't really care to see people have to hit a clown's mouth at 100 feet to make the shot because they're so cramped on the area to use. Mozzarella sticks, foolishness. And I like forcing a player in course design. I like forcing a player to throw a shot, but not to the point where it overcomes the aesthetics of the course and everything else, and just makes it to where one shot after another has a very narrow, this is what you're going to do. Because that's, especially now, it's not as fun to watch, and it's not as fun to play.
Completely understandable. And I think that Eagles Crossing would be a very, very fun place to host a major every single year if it was going to be at the same spot every single year. Let's keep the ball rolling on the hot takes. Ron, what is your disc golf hot take?
Mine is going to be being able to use whatever you want is great. Buying that hottest, fastest disc is sort of silly. And unless you're a sponsored pro, throwing one manufacturer's discs is just why. And that's unpopular. Everybody wants to, or everybody should want to get the best they can out of whatever. And while I'm fortunate to have a sponsor who has basically 3 companies to pick from, I can throw Westside, I could throw Latitude, and I could throw DD and a huge base. If I had my choices, I would probably have a mixed bag, because I would have whatever worked best for me. And I am sponsored, so I picked the best disc from my sponsor. But that's not the way it should be for you. You should go out there and try everything. If you find a place that'll allow you to try everything, I don't know if there's any other stores besides the DD superstores like Dynamic Texas. You take whatever you want out, you throw it of all of their stuff and find out what works. And yeah, not that hot of a take. But yeah, it's one of those that I know people that only throw a specific brand, and there's no way they're being considered for sponsorship, and they're limiting themselves in how they play. It's why.
I'm kind of like that. And I will say my reason, at least behind it, is I guess just lazy. And there was just so many things, starting out, there were so many things to learn, form, timing, technique. There was so much stuff for a new player. It was overwhelming. And going to the store, one thing for me was like, I do this even with my clothes. I simplify my closet as much as possible. That way I don't have to think about it. And with discs, to me, I kind of took that same mentality as I'm just going to pick 1 or 2 companies, and I'm just going to, that way I have less options to choose from, and I can focus more on form and on throwing and on learning those discs, as opposed to, being a new player and having the options from 10 companies, who have 30, 40 different plastic and molds and everything. It was just way too overwhelming. And that's at least my reasoning for doing that. I think maybe someone who's been in the game longer, who's figured out, their form and stuff, I would say, yeah, definitely, I agree with you. But I would say for new players, I feel like that's very intimidating, having that many options. And then you just end up with a ton of discs that you never really learn how to throw because you're trying new stuff all the time.
One of the questions that you had shot me was if I was going to suggest to a brand new player 3 discs, a putter, a mid-range, and a driver. And so I would go with a understable putter like Swan Reborn, and then I would go with a mid-range that is very neutral, like and slow, like for example a Fuse, very neutral, very slow, because both of those are going to show your flaws. And the other part is, if you're a new player, you're not going to be able to throw either one of those very far. But you're probably going to be able to throw those almost as far as everything else you throw. Until you get over 300 feet, you don't need a driver. You might use a straight fairway, a slower straight fairway like an Escape or Evader or something like that that's just going to be straight. Not anything special, because you figure out how to throw that thing straight, you can go and buy a disc that goes right. You can buy a disc that goes left. It's the straight shots. The straight shot is the hardest shot to master in this game. I think it's been said a lot of times that, man, if I could just throw a straight shot, but that's what you need to start with. Get out there and throw the straight shots. And so that's what I would suggest is 3 slow in their slot. They're going to be slow. They're going to be slightly understable, and they're going to be very controllable. And they'll show you when you're making mistakes in form. They'll show you when you are doing it right.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And Ron, thank you for transitioning us. I didn't even have to do the heavy lifting. I was going to do the heavy lifting, but you took care of it for me. So I appreciate that. So that is correct. That is the first question of the Ace Round. What are some discs that Ron would recommend for new players or whomever to go out and buy? So thank you for doing that. And real quick, before we move to question number 2, for learning to throw straight, would you say the best way is kind of what we had talked about earlier with using that, just the line in between 2 objects, whether it's hash marks, a soccer field, 2 street poles, whatever it is? Or is there maybe another quick drill or tip that you'd have for learning how to throw straight?
It is the hardest thing to learn. And the best way you can do it is by using slower discs. Even once you get up to faster discs, the physics of a faster disc is going to fight you. Man, it's going to want to go side to side way more. So you're still better off up to, say, 350 throwing a slower disc if you can get it that far. And that trick I told you about throwing all your drives, everything in your bag, and looking for where they clump up. If you're a person that doesn't throw over, say, 350, you're going to find that you can get almost everything that you have. Your putters are going to be out there probably at 280 or maybe even a little more. And your mid-ranges are going to be close to where your drivers are, to where there's not a huge benefit for going for the super fast disc compared to a disc that's slower. You're still going to get the same advantages, except you're also not going to go side to side as much. And so throwing straight, a lot of it is going to be how you set your body up. The other is going to be using a disc that will accentuate whatever form you have to go straight. You can use some of that to correct.
I absolutely love that. And let's just go ahead and keep the Ace Round going here. So I'll go with the second question. What is the favorite course you have played and one you would love to play in the future?
Well, I think we mentioned them both. I think my favorite course right now is Maple Hill. Really enjoy it. It's a great course. Steve Dodge did a fine job in laying that one out. And of course, Eagle Crossing would be the one that's next on my list of the larger courses that I haven't played.
I know we're definitely wanting to plan a trip, go out there, because I think from here it's about 5 hours. So just leave super early, go out there, get it. And it's far enough to where get some lunch and maybe play it again or do something like that, or maybe play doubles the second round, just just to get your money's worth, since it's a day trip kind of thing.
Right.
All right, but next question we got for you here is one tip you would give to yourself who just started playing disc golf.
First one would be to start out throwing the slower disc, and we already covered that. The other one would be get a disc like an overstable fairway and try and figure out how to throw an anhyzer. If you have played with a whammo, and actually that's not as common as it used to be. It used to be everybody had played catch and transitioned into playing disc golf. So one of the smartest, best ways for anybody to get together with their form is to play catch. I think I gave that tip to you guys the last time we were on here, because you get instant feedback from your partner. If you throw it 30 feet, 40 feet away and he has to run for it every time, it's not going to work so good. The other one is that you can throw 100 times in 5 minutes or 10 minutes instead of go get it, throw it, go get it, throw it. And so you can take something like a putter or a soft putter, something like that, get out at about 200 feet and try and play catch with it. That would be a really, really fast way to learn how to throw a disc and get quick feedback on making it go where you want it to go.
Fourth question we've got for you. What is your favorite memory playing disc golf?
At the Players Cup on hole 17, I screwed up the drive. Barry Schultz screwed up the drive, and both of our approaches were short. I was probably 40 foot short on the basket, and he threw over close to OB and was quite short, and ended up having to make a shot from like 60 feet, and he smacked his drive, or his putt just smashed it. And I turned around and smashed mine to hold the tie. And I heard some guy behind me go, "Holy crap, we got a game." Because we were tied going in. Kenny was 2 strokes back on 18. And 18, it had some OB, but it was up and down from about 350 across a marsh. So, yeah, we knew it was going to go into overtime at that point. And that was pretty cool.
Definitely those kind of finishes make it more exciting, get you hooked and ready to play again.
I was just hearing the guy in the background.
Yeah.
Like, I've had an awful lot of when I won Worlds the first time, that was big. I really wanted to do that. And yeah, there's just so many. It's tough to pick just one.
All right. Well, last one we got here for you is what is the biggest mistake you see new players make?
Probably the most common mistake that players make is taking a huge step on their drive and throwing it up into the sky. Almost every beginner when they start does this. They'll take a big step and their arm will go up. They'll be trying to throw it hard, and they'll throw a straight up and down hyzer shot. And for the first probably a week or so, they'll struggle with trying to keep it straight or low. And every time they try and throw it hard, they'll throw it up into the sky. And easiest way to fix that is to try and start learning at it. Like, instead of trying to smash it, go to 60% and just throw a flat shot and get that figured out before you try and kill it. And the other one is, when you're thinking about trying to throw something hard, you're not really throwing it hard. You're just speeding up your form. It's actually, you don't try and throw hard, because if you try and throw hard, you're going to pull it in closer to your body. You're going to shorten your leverage, and you're going to be all uptight, and you're probably going to shank it. And if you relax and you throw a nice smooth shot like you would when you were out playing with your friends, instead of trying to kill it, you're going to throw way better.
Yeah, I love those tips. And I think this episode was so much fun. I learned a ton. I hope everyone else at home learned a ton as well. Ron, where can the listeners connect with you and continue to follow your journey?
Well, I'm on Facebook at Ron Convers Jr. I'm on Instagram at Convers Jr. And I'm getting ready to fire up a YouTube channel. And it's already existing, but right now it's just got some old videos of some of the tournaments I played in that were filmed. So I expect to start putting quite a bit of information out. Cody Deal's giving me a hand with trying to film and getting it up there.
Awesome. Very exciting. If you're ever up here in Wichita or have some free time, we're more than happy to be your guinea pigs and, maybe break some bad habits we have or something, or teach us something we need to know. Cause we're definitely always trying to learn, always trying to improve, and, who better to learn from. But thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us once again. I'm sure we'll see you up here in Wichita one of these weekends for a tournament, and with this season coming up, best of luck to you. Hopefully you take some people's money like you have been in the past.
That's my plan. I'll see you guys maybe up at Ducks or somewhere close.
Thank you for listening to the Chain Clankers podcast. Make sure you follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Chain Clankers, and hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening to us from so you never miss another episode.